Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to the Sort of Rider Rumblings podcast. We're going to talk about the Rough Riders, surprise, surprise, and also about the Grey Cup, a topic which really doesn't have much to do with the Rough Riders, but it is in Regina and there is interest, so we will dive into that as well. I am here, as always, with my worthy constituent, Dr. Murray McCormick. Murr, how are you doing?
Great. It's Grey Cup week. It's finally here. How long have we been waiting for this? Since 2018, it feels
Something
like.
that.
Just never thought it'd get here.
Yeah, it's and it'll be over before you know it. These things, it goes from Tuesday to Sunday at a cycle that never ceases to amaze, or maybe it's just a function of age. It went from 1978 to 2014 pretty quickly, so that's a function of being near or over 60.
It was a good weekend of football, though. I thought, I thought the 2 weeks finals were entertaining, kept me going, kept me watching right to the bitter end. I was going to watch them to the bitter end anyway. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but exciting games. I know it's not Rider Rumblings, but I think the two best teams came out of it. I would have liked to have seen Montreal here. I would have liked to have seen BC here. I was okay whoever made it. Kind of like Andrew Harris. Yeah. It doesn't matter who they were, but I think the two best teams are going to be in the Grey Cup, and it. Hopefully the Blue Bombers don't blow them out. We get to stick around. Well, we'll stick around at the end of the Grey Cup, but hopefully it's in a good Grey Cup, and Blue Bombers keep it.
The two close. Best teams in each division are in the Grey Cup. I don't think the two best teams in the league are in the Grey Cup. You could very credibly say that I think the real Grey Cup was played on Sunday when Winnipeg met BC, and I think a case could be made for Calgary as a team that. As a 12-6 team is superior to Toronto. So I'm not sure this Grey Cup is a great case for the East-West format, but
I think the two teams did the two teams who deserved to win the game got through though, Rob? Like in the end, the Alouettes did, and in the end, the BC Lions couldn't handle the noise. That's I think that's a big part. That's 20 seconds at the end of the game when the crowd was just so deafening. You can even tell over the TV that the best team, the team that handled the conditions, won. So
the best team won. The best team won on each day. I'm just saying that I don't think you got the two best teams in the league in the Grey Cup.
Yeah, it would have been great to have Nathan Rourke.
Well, that's the thing.
That would have kicked this up to.
That could have given this week a buzz that I just don't think will otherwise be there. And give all credit to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for what they've done, but. I just don't think that's the type of story that's really going to captivate people in this area of the country, given the rivalry between the Rough Riders and the Bombers, and the fact that the Bombers have won 2 in a row. I mean, I saw 4 of the 5 Grey Cups Edmonton won consecutively in person, and believe me, by 1981 it got pretty old. By 1980 it got pretty old when they won their 3rd in a row, and they would win 2 more. So. Such is the life of such is life watching a dynasty. You have to appreciate what they do, but it blew me away that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have lost as many games since obtaining Zach Claros, 7, as the Rough Riders have lost in their last 7. I mean, my goodness, what a run they're on.
What a trade, eh? What a trade for both ways for the Blue Bombers, or for the Riders sending him to Toronto, then Toronto sending him to Winnipeg.
Don't forget though that the Riders got Kian Schaefer-Baker with the draft pick that they got, that they received in return for Zach Claros.
I think both teams would be happy with the way that trade out. Winnipeg a little happier than what's transpired with Kian Schaefer-Baker. But yeah, what a great move! You always wonder, and I looked that up. I saw that. I was looking, who was that 4th round pick they got for Zach, and it was KSB. So good trade there.
So,
anything else going on in Rider world?
Quarterbacking. The Bo Levi Mitchell's negotiating rights, at least, traded to the Hamilton Tiger Cats on Monday for a couple of draft picks and the ever popular future considerations. What do you think the ramifications here are, in this case, are for the Rough Riders, Mer?
Well, I don't know about you. When I saw it come up on my Twitter feed, I was shocked. I didn't think anything would be happening this week. It shows that I don't really understand how the CFL rules work. I thought there's a moratorium on the Grey Cup. I understand it doesn't really start till Wednesday, but
I think you can kind of sneak it in on Monday or even the Tuesday.
Yeah, I think the CFL, the off season is so relatively short, they can't really take time off. But it sure kicked off the old Grey Cup interest with a bang and kind of put the Riders on the front page of most web pages and stuff like that. I I don't know what the Riders are going to do, Rob. I know you approached it in your column and whatnot. I think he was their only option, and I think he still remains their only option. I still think they have to go hard after him. I still think that they've traded his rights, but they haven't traded him exactly. So he can still pick where he wants to go as a free agent. Maybe the Riders can, out of Charleston Hughes, maybe swap something for Charleston to get him to get his rights back.
Hamilton needs a quarterback, though. Why would why would they
sort of the Riders
unless they can't sign him? But Hamilton's now got that locked up for the negotiating rights, locked up till February. So that really makes it that throws a crimp into things if that was indeed what the Rough Riders planned to do. But like you, every possible next quarterback for the Rough Riders has flaws, and those of Bo Levi Mitchell, actual or perceived, has certainly been made clear in the past few weeks. But when I compare that to the alternative, I just think he was the best of an imperfect bunch, and still is. But Dave Naylor tweeted yesterday that he's quite sure Bo Levi Mitchell is going to sign with Hamilton, and if you try to make a living wagering against Dave Naylor, you're going to be in the poorhouse pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the thing is, the incumbent here, I guess, could technically be Cody Fajardo, but they've pretty well, eliminated him from
that earth is scorched.
I know, and he doesn't want to come back. I don't think I'd be surprised. Maybe too surprised. Bo Levi signs here, and even bigger surprise if Cody Fajardo comes back. Craig Dickinson mentioned they haven't given up on him the other day. Not, and that's even being a little strong in those words.
They gave up. They made actions speak a lot more loudly than words. Yeah. What they decided coming out of their final bye week was tantamount to giving up on Cody Fajardo. Yeah. You can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. I think the only hope for Cody Fajardo coming back here is if there were to be a new regime, and that regime might look more favorably upon Cody Fajardo than the group that nailed him to the sideline with 2 games left in the season. That was the window for Cody Fajardo to come back. A new head coach, new GM that likes Cody Fajardo more than Jeremy O'Day and Craig Dickinson do. Now that regime is back, anything that is said from that group about Cody is to be completely dismissed in terms of any possibility of him returning. That ship has sailed and is now on fire.
Could they be in a worse position for quarterbacking right now, Rob? Mason Fine and Jake Delagala, whatever. Levi Lewis.
They got Levi. They just don't have Bo Levi.
There's nothing there that says starting quarterback all over him. You've been around long enough that the second string guys get him in. We've seen what Fine can do. We've seen what Jake can do. Who knows what Levi Lewis can do.
But with the same encumbrances that Cody Fajardo faced, a terrible offensive line, a very average crew of receivers, and in strategy that was so outstanding that they decided to dump their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and their receivers coach.
I don't think the situation is any fairer to Mason Fine than it was to Cody Fajardo. Both of them were put in very unenviable situations and with predictable results. So I don't think you completely write off Mason Fine, but you certainly can't put a lot of stock in it either, because that's just can't be the plan going forward. They've got to win next year, or they're gone. So they've got to find a quick fix. But where's the quick fix? Where's the no quick fix? Not in this offense.
There's no quick fix. They've really painted themselves into a corner with O'Day and Dickinson on 1 year, still have 1 year remaining on their contract. So looking to get anybody to sign and getting continuity is going to be tough. It's going to be a tough sell when you only have a 1 year deal and guys are looking for continuity. There really aren't a lot of great quarterbacks out there, and even Bo Levi comes with baggage. So
anybody they were going to get was full of question marks. I'm not sure that. I don't think there's a better case for. Take away what happened at the end of the year. I don't think any quarterback that's out there would be better than bringing back Cody Fajardo. I just don't think A, that they can bring him back, and B, that we'd want to come back. But honestly, when you look at what he did behind that offensive line, I don't know what more you could expect. I mean, I
I
think
would
we
be
talked about this before on podcasts, but
I'd be shocked if Cody came back.
I
And
just cannot see it.
I've learned this year. You never say never because never exists in the CFL. But that ship has sailed. That book has been closed. The book is ended. They moved on another chapter. I don't think Cody. I've heard. I question whether Cody and Jason got along. I wonder if there's more of a disconnect higher up between Cody and Craig. Maybe regardless, it was Craig's final decision to obviously bench Cody. Maybe he's not over that. Cody's not over that. So there's still all that sort of leftover baggage for Cody. But he has to move on. How can you come back after being treated that way? I don't know
how can you sell that.
How can you sell it to the fans? Even Bo Levi isn't the easiest of sells either. He's a guy with shoulder injuries. He's going to be 33 in March.
A lot of Rider fans just don't like him.
Yeah, and I've always liked him.
I've always liked him, but
I found him to be good to deal with and that stuff. So
I think if he were to come here, I think people would flip in an instant. But I just can't see that happening. And the other thing the other problem this creates is that the Riders are pretty much waiting now until February to figure out who their quarterback is. They've got to hire an offensive coordinator before that, or all the good ones will be gone. So again, how do you ensure that there's compatibility between your quarterback and offensive coordinator if one is hired so far in advance of the other element being introduced into the equation? Let's say that the Riders have been able to trade for Bo Levi Mitchell's rights. Then you're negotiating with a quarterback at the same time as you're trying to bring in an offensive coordinator, and there can be some kind of harmony there. How do you ensure that there's a compatibility that they've already acknowledged was lacking when there's such a distance between the hiring of an offensive coordinator and the landing of a quarterback, whomever that may be? I think that just impedes the whole process.
I also think it's going to happen, but I still think regardless of what the process is, it's going to probably happen pretty quickly. I think Craig wants to get the offensive coordinator settled because Ottawa's looking for a head coach. It's going to be all the other changes because come Sunday, there's only be one team that's winning, and that's going to be the Grey Cup champion. Now the other teams are going to look and say, what can we do to get better? And whoever wins is going to look to see what they can get better. That means hiring new staff and stuff because they're going to move on, move up, and whatnot. So I anticipate it's going to happen pretty quickly, and regardless of whoever they get for end up with quarterback, that's they're going to go with. Because, as I've said, and we're probably going to mention, I don't know if we can ever hit this hard enough. They only have 1 year left between the two of them on their contracts, and I see that as a really tough sell in the CFL when offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators traditionally, and I'm not saying all the time, but traditionally get 2-year deals. So I think. A little short-sighted on Craig Reynolds' part. Well, did they deserve an extension? I don't know how you sell an extension after that season, but you have to deal with the financial and the perception of what you have in your staff, that your two biggest guys are only on 1-year deals and have 1 year remaining on their contracts. And you got to somehow sell that as being maybe a positive. I'm not quite sure how you do that.
One thing they would be able to sell under different circumstances was, look, there's veteran quarterbacks out there, but they all have flaws. We're going to develop our own guy. But they're not in a position where they can do that when they're on 1-year contracts. It's win or else. And Craig Reynolds made that very clear on this very podcast last week. What the mandate is for next year is get back to winning football. So they don't have the luxury of patience. They don't have the luxury of being able to nurture a young quarterback, even if they were to find one. I just don't think that that is compatible with having a head coach and GM on expiring contracts. They've got to win. So that reduces your pool of candidates to the established or veteran quarterbacks who are out there, and it's a pretty short list, and there's some maybes. Vernon Adams Jr. I think would be on the list if Nathan Rourke returns next year, and he may go to the NFL. Then I think Vernon Adams Jr., who I believe is still under contract to BC next year, but I think he's going to want to play. There's Nick Arbuckle. There's another name you can throw out there. The fact that Hamilton is traded for Bo Levi Mitchell, if they get that deal done, that renders Dane Evans expendable. And Trevor Harris is to become a free agent in February if he doesn't re-sign with Montreal. And other than that, you're talking about the Matthew Schultzes of the world. So there's your quarterback pool in terms of veteran quarterbacks. One of them will probably end up here. but who will that be, and will that work? Of the options that are available, or potentially available, I would like Trevor Harris the most. If he's coming off a pretty good year, if for some reason Montreal doesn't sign him, I think Trevor Harris would look good here. But if you're looking at it from Montreal's perspective, you're looking at the quarterbacking landscape and saying, well, we got to re-sign Trevor Harris, because otherwise we're in the same boat as the Saskatchewan Roughriders, thinking, do we want Dane Evans? Do we want Vernon Adams Jr., which they've already tried, Matthew Schultz, Nick Arbuckle, etc. Every team that's looking for a quarterback, and there are not just one or two, I would think, will be faced with the same issue the Roughriders are. So why would Montreal, unless they just decide they want to groom a young quarterback, sever ties with Trevor Harris? But if they do, that would seem to be the best option here. But he might be the best option somewhere else too.
Could you imagine trying to sell Dane Evans in this market? Dane Evans is good when he doesn't turn the ball over. I think he lost 7 fumbles or some crazy number like that, and how many picks. And that's one of the reasons Toronto has so many turnovers in its favor, is they played Hamilton 4 times and they got an opportunity to get a lot because it was a turnover crazy team. They cleaned it up as the season went on, but earlier on. So I don't know how you sell a Dane Evans here. And what do you say to Trevor Harris? Here's our placeholder till we get a quarterback that develops, and we can, maybe have something coming through the system. Some guy is going to.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really say you're our guy with giving that person any assurance beyond November of 2023. Yeah. So I think that becomes an issue too if you want to sign somebody long term. Now, once upon a time in 1951, the Rough Riders signed a quarterback who had started at the University of Tulsa named Glenn Dobbs. So maybe the Tulsa connection could work again with Dane Evans 70 plus years later. He's got a great arm. He's quarterbacked in a Grey Cup. There's a lot of things to really like about him. That's why Hamilton decided he was their guy, and they let Jeremiah Mazzoli go to Ottawa. So people have seen something in Dane Evans, and there was a game this season where I think we lit it up through 5 touchdown passes. Yeah. But he's equally prone to committing 5 turnovers. And but that's your quarterbacking pool, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes all the Cody Fajardo detractors, be careful what you wish for, because now that shallow pool of quarterbacks is the one in which the Rough Riders have chosen to wade.
Well, maybe they'll get a better offensive line in the offseason. I'm sorry. Hopefully.
Well, they don't have a choice. I mean,
they have to do something.
Patrick Mahomes couldn't have done anything behind that offensive line last year or this year. Is it this year or last year?
It seems like last year, but it
seems like 10 years ago. It was.
I miss being part of the playoffs. I kind of got maybe used to that kind of buzz you get going through the semifinal and this year and you around that stuff. I really miss that aspect, and I'm sure the Riders miss it too, financially and emotionally. But so we get to a little bit of it in the Grey Cup, but as you said, and it's tough to say there's no buzz, because there is a bit of a buzz. But do you feel there's a huge buzz, or is that going to start maybe tomorrow when the coaches start their press conferences and the team parties start to build up? Maybe this will turn out to be the Grey Cup.
There will be a buzz by once the venues get going, that will create its own buzz. I think it'll create more of a buzz than the game will. I think the fact that there's a festival in town, people are going to enjoy that, and there's lots of cool things to do. Yeah. And by the end of the weekend, I'm going to see some friends I haven't seen in a while, and things like that. You get wrapped up in it. But the game itself, I don't think it's an intriguing matchup, because it should be Winnipeg winning without too much difficulty, and it's Winnipeg winning again. And it's a game that's virtually devoid of marquee value. As tremendous as Zach Collaros has been, there's nothing really that really radiates excitement about Zach Collaros. He was once a quarterback here, and I mean, he's done some great things in the Canadian Football League, but he's been around long enough that it's not like, hey, here's Warren Moon quarterbacking Edmonton. It's not like there's not that. Here's Doug Flutie quarterbacking Calgary or Toronto. You don't have that. Again, that's where they miss the Nathan Rourke factor. I think that's where they miss a really intriguing matchup. There's just nothing really electric about the Toronto Argonauts.
You don't think Andrew Harris fires things up? Is there that rivalry?
Harris versus his old teammates is the best storyline. But
does that get Saskatchewan fired up? Because
I think Rider fans are going to look at this game and say, well, regardless of who wins, it's tantamount to making a decision between would you rather get hit by a truck or a bus? Would you like to see Winnipeg win the Grey Cup on Mosaic Stadium turf, or would you like to see Andrew Harris win the Grey Cup here? One of those is going to happen.
Exactly.
Neither one of them, I think, is a particularly joyous sight for Rough Riders fans. I think that could be kind of an ordeal for people. So I just don't sense that there's this isn't a very intriguing matchup. There isn't a lot of marquee power among the players, and aside from that, and this will probably, and you know what, it'll probably turn into a tremendous game now that we're saying all this.
It could, because I don't think Toronto's that far behind Winnipeg, but I think Winnipeg just gets the advantage. One of the things I feel about Winnipeg has so much experience. Like, you don't go to 2 back-to-back Grey Cups and win back-to-back Grey Cups without gaining experience, without knowing what to expect when you get here. Like, the teams arrive today, they see what happens. There'll be a media entourage waiting on the tarmac for them. And I don't know if some of the Argonauts have experienced that. Andrew Harris, Brendan Banks, Jagard, those guys. Sorry,
Jagard Davis.
Yeah, losing my tongue here. And they have experience with that, but I just don't think the experience on Winnipeg, I think, is going to carry them through, right from the head coach right down to the offensive line.
And they're just good. I mean, good is a gross understatement.
Sorry, Rob, I had a little cough.
I mean, I guess the only thing that could really narrow the gap is if the Zach Collaros ankle injury is of greater severity than or is of such severity that it really hampers his play.
That is the big question, and I think regardless of what the Bombers say and what Zach Collaros says, that ankle is still going to be a concern, because that's still a sprained ankle. At the least, it's sprained. You hope it's at least the minor to how severe it's going to be. But you know, when he tried to walk back on the field, and that's a sign of a veteran. He knew he couldn't go. Maybe a younger guy would have tried to get under center and try to pull himself in. But good for Zach for recognizing that he couldn't go, and the way came in Drew Brown. So good for Zach on recognizing that factor. But I think the ankle is we're all going to be watching as much as we used to watch any injury to the quarterback. I think a guy like Zach, and as you mentioned, is pretty dependent on his mobility. And without that, I don't know what happens. That kind of changes the game completely. Maybe McLeod Bethel Thompson can have another great game in a row there, and maybe that kind of helps Toronto get back. But Zach's ankle is the focus of a whole lot of stuff. Tomorrow it's going to be interesting in the rivals. He's not among the available players, and I understand he's always been available on the day when he rides on the tarmac. So maybe they're trying to rest him or keep him away from prying media questions about the ankle.
I think the latter would be true, but
I think we remember. Was it
good luck asking Michael O'Shea about player injuries during the week. That's
I've been on the end of one of those questions a couple of times, and he does not take questions about injuries very. doesn't it's even Craig towards the end of the season started saying, I don't have to really tell you that. You can see it on the roster by the end of the week. But Mike O'Shea and Mark Trestman used to be the other guy who hated roster questions and would never answer them. But.
Well, guess what though? Your Canadian Football League, you're now in bed with all these online gambling services, and people are going to wager money. They want to be able to do so with some degree of confidence that a player is or isn't going to play. So you can't have it both ways. If you want that money, if you want that revenue, if you want that attention, the quid pro quo is you've got to be forthcoming about injuries. Look at the National Football League, for example. Yeah. It's otherwise, if you want to just keep playing these upper body injury, lower body injury games that NHL types like, well, fine. But then I don't think you can credibly marry yourself to these gambling sites the way you have, because that's the people who are going to bet. They need that information. It's crucial. If you're going to put even a nickel on this game, I think you need to have some idea of whether Zach Collaros, A, is going to play, and B, the severity of the ankle. Otherwise, people are going to be betting blind. So I think the new landscape dictates more transparency and honesty than there's traditionally been, or than as anticipated in the days to come.
Maybe they could put out like an injury report that lists guys' status every day. Oh, well, they do that in the regular season, don't they? And the other teams do that, but I don't know how many of them. I trust them. I got to be. We saw them enough that I think the injury reports were believable, were credible. Not as bad as the depth charts used to be back in the day, when those were just a pack of lies about who's going to play and who not. But just pen out an injury report: Zach Collaros ankle questionable, and then that's.
So if let's say Zach's ankle is good enough for him to be Zach Collaros, how does Toronto win? Where's the path to victory for Toronto?
I think it takes a perfect game from their offense and tons of pressure from their defensive line. I like Toronto's defensive line. I think it's pretty damn good. But they on offense, they have to play almost perfect. They can't let that defensive line get any sort of momentum, any sort of pressure going on them. I think the receivers have to be better than Toronto's and the Winnipeg's defensive backs. I really think it's going to take a perfect game. I don't think they can get by with turnovers and those things, which isn't really too insightful because you can't win when they turn the ball over. But I think a near perfect game is going to be required from the Toronto. Whereas the Blue Bombers, they can get away with kind of having a wiggle or two, or
they can play their C game and win.
Yeah, and they kind
Toronto
of
needs its A game.
Yeah, Toronto needs its very, very best game to play. And let's just one quick. It's good to have Toronto playing in the championship game. I read the Toronto papers. I still haven't seen a whole lot of exposure for the Argos in the Toronto papers when I look at them. They're not the front page. Kind of wonder if they win where they're going to hold the parade, go around BMO Field and come back in. But it's good that they're still trying to be competitive, and they're still considering the market that does. It's kind of blasé about the Argos with everything else going on.
They got a decent crowd by Argo standards on Sunday.
21,000, I think
they
it was.
They seem to be into it. So,
well, you and I have been there. They put on a great game day product. I really think people in Southern Ontario are missing out on a great game day product. And I kind of like watching games from BMO Field. I think it's got good sight line. Well, the press box leaves a little to be desired.
I got a press box that wrecked my knee. But aside from
don't get me laughing. Still, I think the third time was the third time you did, or the fourth
I was sitting for the uninitiated, the East Final in 2017. I was sitting beside. They had kind of a piece of wood below the desk level of the press box that I was sitting beside, and every time I got up, I would turn and I would ram my knee against this thing and let loose with a sound that it's when you step on a dog's paw, that's kind of the yelping noise that I would emit. But me being me, I think it happened 3 times. I think I had more bruises than some of the players after that game was over. That hurt so badly.
The last one, I can still hear.
And then I flew home with no leg room, and my knee was killing me. So.
I still remember you hitting the last one and the noise you made. And I know.
Yeah, it was after the game. It was just I got up and was like, oh man. So great stadium, but do something about that press box.
Yeah,
it's lethal.
Yeah, Rob, I don't.
Does Winnipeg have a weakness? Like, is there something exploitable?
Place kicking. I think their place kicker missed 2 converts, and the first time. When's the last time we haven't even touched about all the craziness and zaniness we saw in that West Final with the guy returning a convert for 2 points, which I don't ever remember seeing. It probably has happened, but I don't remember. And I think Legio, you're going to help me with that one, Rob?
Legio,
sorry.
Legio.
Is inconsistent. I think he had a pretty good average. I think he was over 80, but I still think he hasn't proven that he can make the big kick, not like they did last year with Sergio Castillo. I think that's their weakness. I really think special teams place kicking is one they have to work after.
Toronto's place kicking, I don't think is any better.
Isn't much better either. So I think those two So you could have 2 guys coming down battling with rouges in the last minute of the game to see who can make a show. And the weather conditions, considering we're in November, are supposed to be quite normal. Like -8, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't look that bad.
For 5 o'clock on a November in Regina, maybe they should continue to leave the Grey Cup in the end of November and quit fooling around with these ideas of wrapping the season up in October. But that's a whole other rant that I...
Well, you never know. If you move the Grey Cup up a week or 2, you could have had the situation in Regina where the Regina Thunder ran into when they play Winnipeg, and you've got people out there with shovels. Wouldn't that be a Grey Cup lore type story? But once in 2009, it snowed on the final day of September, or the final Sunday of September. So once you get into the fall in Canada, in the prairies, there's really no fail-safe. Look at the Grey Cup. Look at the Grey Cup weather in 2013. It was beautiful that day, and it was brutal the rest of the week.
Craig Reynolds had some numbers. He says that the weather is better in early October on average than it is in November. We know that, and that's maybe why they're looking at avoiding bad weather games, and it looks like they're going to avoid this one. But as the fans know what to do. They know how to dress. They know how to dress in layers. They know how to the lucky ones that get to sit in the the lounge, and then the suites are going to stay warm. I think we'll be okay. People, don't worry about us. We'll have to navigate our way to the press box. But we'll
actually, Burr, I got you working the stands on Sunday. Didn't I tell you about that?
Well, I think I just quit. Thank you.
I had to do that in '95. Somebody else has got to take that bullet.
Did you? Did 95?
That was cold. I was the stands roamer on November 19th, 1995. I went to the very top of the temporary bleachers on the south side, and the ink in my pen froze, and I had to engrave what I was writing into my notepad and then kind of hold it up and look if I could read the indentations. It was like Fred Flintstone typing with the chisel.
Our sports staff was so large back then that David Moser and I stayed in the office in case somebody called in a score. That's two of us sitting there watching the game.
I should have phoned in a score. Baltimore 37, Calgary 20. And here's my dog. Yeah. Look at her. Aww. Is she not the most adorable dog? Say hi, Candy.
Who do you think she's picking for the Grey Cup? Does she care?
Well, she likes Toronto because they have Jim Barker, and because they once had a part owner named John Candy.
That's true too.
Yeah, Candy's an Argo fan.
Those seem familiar though. Those jokes.
Yeah, I used that joke the other day in a column, but I had to recycle it.
You want to go and just? I guess we can, if we want to go there. What about the Player of the Year awards? Are we excited about those, or is it?
Most of them seem pretty cut and dry, don't they?
Yeah.
Is there any mystery to any of them?
I think maybe defensive player might be a little bit of one with Sean Lemon and what's his name from Ottawa. Tells you how much. So he had 17. He had a bunch of sacks. So maybe I think the rest of them are all. And I actually anticipate a West sweep. Just from everything. And we can touch a little bit upon that Mario Alford is the special teams player of the year, but not an all-star, which is befuddling in other ways, which, mind you, compared to
Mario Alford should end up winning that one.
Compared to what happened to the all-star voting, I think that's even a little minor concern this year. But Mario Alford should. But Grant had a pretty good year with the Bombers too, though. It just, I think, hard to overlook 4 TDs.
Yeah, but it's Grant's not in the running for this one. It's Mario Alford versus Chandler Worthy.
I got my teams mixed up. Sorry. Grey Cup fever already, folks.
Defensive player of the year in the East is Lorenzo Malden, the fourth, I believe.
You had to look him up, didn't you?
I was just trying to remember whether it was third or fourth. Is he Lorenzo Malden the third or the fourth?
Yeah, and then if Zach's Kolaris is the player of the year with Eugene Lewis, and I think Zach's going to win that handily. Rourke's the top Canadian. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Dalton Shane, man. Sean. I'm having a wonderful time with names today. He could have been player of the year, in a lot of other teams. He was so good, so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I am looking forward to watching him in person again. That's one player I really enjoy watching. I remember even the preseason game that Winnipeg played here, and Zach Kolaris didn't play in that game. It's like, man, is this guy good? He was making all sorts of difficult catches over the middle, and just with Drew Brown and to go to Prukop throwing the ball. It's like, is this guy ever good? You could just tell he had something. And again, maybe I'm retreading old turf here, but why couldn't the Riders bring in somebody like that?
Well, remember, we once had a guy like that who came up and blew up the league named Weston Dressler many moons ago.
Yeah, he came in and did exactly that. Candy is so cute. Look at that puppy. Isn't she cute? I don't think there's much mystery to the awards in most
Stanley
cases.
Bryant, I think, will win again. I just think, unfortunately, being a voter, once you win once as an offensive lineman, you're guaranteed to win it a few more times because you get the reputation and you get the name recognition. And not saying that he's not good either.
Although Gene Mikowski was named a runner-up after winning it twice, so it doesn't guarantee you winning it.
No, but
the one I would really like to see on Thursday night, I hope Dan Clark gets the Jake Goddard Veterans Award.
Yeah,
if ever a player was suitable for an award in this league, when you consider what that award embodies and just the courage and the traits exhibited by Canada's veterans and the commitment and dedication to community, every box that you want to check off for that award, I think you can in the case of Dan Clark. And the fact that that the Grey Cup is in Regina this year, his hometown. If Dan Clark doesn't get that award,
But
every nominee is deserving, but this one
yeah,
just seems to be absolutely perfect for
I
Dan
think
Clark.
when
I
you
really
read
hope
what
he
he
wins
went
that one.
through, and none of the others have gone through the injuries. They've gone through the injuries, but it's right. It's unfair to the others to disparage what they've done because they've done just as amazing things, and it really highlights. And you and I both, it highlights what these guys do in the community. Like, you'll see during the summer there'll be a couple of riders after practice at a football camp at some park in Harbor Landing where there's kids there and they're doing their part. And the CFL players, almost all of them do their part in the community. Get out there, they sign autographs, they're good to people. You don't hear too many bad things.
Well, the Rough Riders I think the Regina Red Sox had a Rough Rider night this past season, and I recall talking to one fan. He said, I couldn't believe this, and my son met Mike Adam, and not only was Mike really nice to the kid, he says, "Yeah, why don't you come to practice? Come to practice tomorrow." They're just there's that kind of bond. You hear about the amazing things that Brett Lothar does, and around the community. There are so many worthy candidates, and you're right. The 8 people who don't win the Jake Goddard Veterans Award are all champions in their own right. But it's just this one, because it's in Regina, I think that should tip it in favor of Dan Clark. If I just can't see how it doesn't go in that direction.
And there's also the Hall of Fame media luncheon on Saturday, or Sunday, which has 2 connections to the Rough Riders. Glenn Suter's going into the media wing, and Ed Willis, an old reporter with the Leader Post, is also going into the media wing. So there's another. I don't think that's going to try to stampede to the breakfast or anything like that. But there's a couple of Regina.
Well, if there's a media and a free breakfast, there will be a stampede.
Actually, I've been to them, and because it's 9:00 in the morning. But when else would breakfast be? It's not as well attended as you might think after a Saturday night of the Grey Cup Festival. And
well, I give you my assurance that I will not be there. So everybody will have a nice time. I
also want to, and I know we're involved in the football, but I've looked through the schedule of events for the Grey Cup, and I have to really be impressed with how everything's organized. It's not just the Grand National Drunk anymore. It's a family event with, there's time for the partying, there's time for parenting and those things. But I think the riders in the CFL, considering how much time they have, they should have been able to do a pretty good job of organized what looks like a great Grey Cup festival. Huge fan of having the footprint all at Real District except for the Spirit of Edmonton, which will be at the Connexus Arts Center. I think that's a great idea. Just park your car, whatever you got to do, take the bus, and everything's going to be there. I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to introduce the fun things for kids, and maybe that's something that'll help the league grow a little bit. Grab these kids that they remember they went with their parents and had a blast at the Grey Cup. I'm not sure how many of the things are free or not, but I really think that they've gone beyond themselves in creating what should be an amazing festival. And once we get around to the buzz catching on, like Wednesday night when Colin James plays a free opening kickoff, I think there's going to be a real festival feeling to what's going on here. And hopefully we can get out there and sample some of it. But geez, Rob, can I have some time to do a little bit of partying?
Are you going to try the slide?
That's my career. Sorry. But it looks like fun.
There's so many openings there.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think there's lots of things to do, and I know it's a part of the football, and it's going to be because they got to make money. Like this is they're coming off of a couple of tough years because of COVID, and they need to make some money.
Well, I'm sure the beer prices will be reflective of the need to make money. That's
as I always said, if you can afford to get drunk at Rider games, you have too much money.
Exactly.
So, and I think if you can if you're there all day, it'll be cool. I love seeing the fans. I just think it's a reminder of how beloved this league is, and how, as you said earlier, about friends you haven't seen for a long time will come up and hug you, and it's fun. It's supposed to be fun.
I'm going out on Saturday night with a friend of mine named Richard Gordon, and Rich and I went to Campbell Collegiate together, and used to sit. We had season tickets together in section 204, row 14, and Rich now lives in Houston, and Rich is coming in for the football game. We're going to go out for on Saturday night. Me and Rich and a friend of mine from high school, or of ours from high school, Scott McKenzie, now living in Saskatoon. So that's going to be as much of a highlight of the week as anything, and that's what the Grey Cup allows to happen. I remember in 2013 when the Grey Cup was here, a friend of mine named Darcy Holstein was in town. Darcy grew up in Regina. I got to know Darcy. We played the same touch football team in Lloydminster during my internship there. So I got to see Darcy and Kim in 2013 because the Grey Cup was here. So it seems every time there's a Grey Cup here, I get to see people I haven't seen for a long time and have a wonderful time with that. So that, so I guess as much as anything, is part of the flavor of Grey Cup week.
Chrisula gets stuck babysitting the dog then? She's not going out with you?
Yeah, I don't think babysitting the dog is really too much penance because she really is cute. And once we've delved into too much dog talk, even I know it's too much. So it's time to wrap it up. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. Give Candy a 10-star rating. She's adorable. It helps us grow the podcast. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts or your podcasts. If you'd like to send us a question, you can email me at rvanstone@postmedia.com and we'll read it on the show. We've got one more left, that being next week before a hiatus. You can follow me on Twitter at Rob Vanstone or Murray at MurrayLP. Murr?
Are we both verified? Are we both verified? Are we both verified on Twitter? Are we blue check marked? Are you?
That's $8 a month? No way. I'm not verified anyway. It's not worth $8 a month to do that.
To be yelled at.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right.
Thank you, Elon, for that gift. And thank you, Murray. And thanks for spending time with us today. And we will wrap it all up in our inimitable fashion next week. For Murray McCormick, our producer Creed and Martell, I'm Rob Vanstone. Thanks for your time. Take care. And for Candy, bye.